Nick, I know that you and I have talked about doing some work together in terms of small business owners and primarily looking and saying, well, do we want to do some men's work? And although we didn't get into that conversation today in depth, do we want to kind of touch on that thought process about you do a lot of work with men and
Yeah.
because it's, let's face it, we look at it and go, men operate differently than women. It's not
Yep.
one that's right and one that's wrong. They're
Yep.
just different.
Yep.
And so, how do we, and by the way, in this shift program, through no major planning, I got to tell you a story. So we had a number of people registered, and of the registration, there was 3 or 4 women who last minute either canceled and or said, nope, I got to do it later. So I ended up with a group of men in the shift coaching program. Just saying that that's cool. So we now have a kind of a men's program anyways, but that's aside from what we talked about. I just think it's kind of funny how it can show up and manifest. But
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was, there's a lot of intentionality around what we set out. You and I talked about it, and that's, what's your thoughts? When you talk about
So,
working with men, what do you do?
yeah, I mean, again, it takes a little bit of context and a little bit of backstory, but again, coming out of the work that I've been doing, and like you, Patrick, have done a lot of personal work, group work, all of that sort of thing. Had a child, and really, I think what happened for me personally is that my focus shifted from kind of my mission, my purpose, my calling, like that bigger. How do I, as a man, want to deliver what I have to offer in the world, which I think is really a key fundamental thing for the masculine to pay attention to, is like it's more than the family. It's how am I going to make a difference out in the world? What's bigger than me that I can dedicate my life to? And I changed, when the child came along, when summer came along, my focus went completely inward, I think. And, it completely focused on the family, completely focused on my wife at the time, all of that. And um, it really destructed, in essence, it really brought down the family, because in so many ways, like I say, my focus as a man, and this is my paradigm, is that as a man, I should be outward focused and focused on the bigger picture, on the world, on the planet. What can I be doing to make that difference out there? Um, and through that, one of the things that came to me is that I'm not doing any men's work. I
Mhm.
don't talk to other men. I might talk to you, Patrick. You were probably, my mentor, my guy to talk to when I needed a guy to talk to. But that's not enough, right?
Mhm.
As a man, mostly as men, we have friends and buddies and bros. We'll go and drink beer and talk sports and that kind of stuff. But we don't have, in my opinion, a lot of opportunity, or most men don't have a lot of opportunity to share, to really
Mhm.
talk about what's going on for them with other men.
Mhm.
And it wasn't until I started exploring some of that I went, oh yeah, right. Of course, this is what's been missing. This is
Mhm.
something that I really need to bring some attention to. I have
Mhm.
I have no problem talking to women and hanging out with women and having great women friends and all of
Easy.
those sorts of things.
Sure.
But that's not it. And women have friends and they talk about these sorts of things, and they actually, as in a just going through days in their life, for the most part, they're sharing at deeper levels with each other, right? And men just aren't doing that.
Well, this, and sometimes, Stephanie, we've been hanging out for over 30 years, and she'll get into something with me and I go, some sweetheart, you got to go phone one of your women. This is not a conversation with me.
Right.
And it's not, I'm not blowing her off in terms of, okay, go, I don't have time for this. It's just the wrong conversation for me. But to your point, interesting. I don't want to quote this. I'll get stats on it, but it's really amazing that, you talk about men hanging out with men, going for beer, shooting pool, whatever that story might be, watching sports. But here's the thing about it is statistically, it's shocking actually. I don't remember the exact numbers, but I'll just throw some on the table. It's like men after 40, like 80% of them do not have a best friend.
Right.
It's like they're that shocking. They 20% have one best friend. Very few have a group of men that. And here's the other thing about it. listen, you and I know, I mean, we could go hang out with guys anytime we want, and we could watch hockey or sports, or we could do all sorts of guy things, go golfing. But to really be able to be in a space where you can have a meaningful conversation, talk about what's really going on, be authentic in that, and even be probably a little bit vulnerable. Well, I've
100%.
said the word vulnerable and intimacy to a group of men in terms of a coaching program. And it's like four of them get embarrassed by the words. Like,
Yeah,
it's like, what are you doing? You know, like,
yeah,
it short circuits men's brains because they've never had the space to do that. Yet when they get comfortable in that space, it's like, I don't ever want to leave the space. I need it.
no,
And it's an interesting time in the world, I think, as well, Nick. And you and I both know this, and we're both kind of passionate about working with men and doing men's work because of just our backgrounds and how important we know it is. But I know that on the island in Victoria, you've got a small group of men that you
yeah.
work with. I think you were. Is that
Yeah,
still
no, no,
carrying?
no. Yeah, absolutely, 100%. So out of that, I started exploring, looking at what are the different opportunities to actually kind of get intentional about meeting with men who are intentional about meeting, right?
Mm-hmm.
And kind of latched onto a couple of groups, and ultimately, what I've ended up now is here in Victoria, I lead a group of men. What is it, about there's 13 of us now. We meet every Tuesday, 3 hours
Wow.
every Tuesday. And really,
Okay.
the point of it is to give men an opportunity to share. And like, that's really all it's about. It's like, okay, what's going on in your life? You want to talk for 20 minutes about, kind of what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
There's some container types of,
Sure.
kind of criteria, right? Like, we're not going off the, off the reservation here, but at the end of the day, and just to your point, once men get a taste of it and start to get, apart from three guys who have moved over the last year or so, no one's left the group. Like, it's just
Yeah.
like over 3 or 4 years or whatever, it's just continued to grow. There's now
Mm-hmm.
5 of those groups here in Victoria.
Mm-hmm.
There's a bunch in Vancouver. This particular group is growing, exponentially. It's interesting, Patrick, and I want to make sure that, sometimes people talk about men's group, and first thing that comes into head is like pickup, or red pill, or kind of toxic, and all of these sorts of things. And this is just so far
No, yeah,
not
not that.
what we're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just like, really is like about, and honestly, Patrick, my motivation in so many ways, and you've got a daughter, is the daughter. And so
Mm-hmm.
for me, it's like, I want to work with men so that men can raise sons, or be, the powerful men that we need, right? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where this really comes from. And the other side of it is, you look, and you were talking about statistics. I don't know what the statistics are, but the men committing suicide, in their 40s and 50s, is just like kind of off the charts.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, much of it has to do with them being, alone and not having people to talk to.